let's move on to making decisions with your sacral response. This is known as your decision-making authority, and authority is your process for gaining clarity and making good decisions. So, as I mentioned before, Ra Uru Hu, the founder of human design, would talk about how you are your own authority, and your human design journey is about becoming more of your own authority and making decisions that are correct for you through the way that you're designed to do that. Your decision-making authority can really be trusted to guide you in the right direction. And as I also mentioned before, authority is intricately connected with your strategy. It's understood in the context of your strategy. So in the case of generators and manifesting generators, you have the strategy to wait to respond, and of course manifesting generators, you have a couple of extra steps, but in general you're responding. That's your strategy, and then your authority is employed after you've responded, after you've used your strategy of responding. So there are three potential ways that sacral beings can experience authority, and all three ways include that sacral response. So again, refer to your human design chart to find out which authority you have. There are some basic mechanics to understanding it, and I don't think that we're going to get too deeply into that, but if you go to the keynotes on your human design chart, there's a section that says decision-making authority or authority, and you will see which authority you have. So these three types of authorities center around the sacral center, and the type of decision-making authority that you have depends on which centers are defined in relation to your sacral. So you'll either have your sacral and your solar plexus defined, that center to the right of the sacral, and that means that you have an emotional generated authority, or you'll just have the sacral center defined, and that means that you have a sacral expressed generated authority. And the third possibility is that you have the sacral and the spleen center defined, and the spleen is to the left of the sacral center. Now, if you have the sacral awareness generated authority, which is the sacral and the spleen, it means that you do not have the emotional solar plexus defined. So let's take a look at each of these, and I have a sample chart up that shows you what I'm talking about on the body graph. Let's look at emotional authority first, because the emotional solar plexus trumps everything in the chart in terms of decision making. When you have the emotional generated authority with the sacral defined and the emotional solar plexus defined, it means that you need to take your time with your sacral response to get clarity. You need to make sure that your sacral response is registering the same thing, the same response, through the course of your emotional ups and downs. So even though your sacral may be responding with in the moment, you can't really trust that until you've slept on it and until you've felt your way through it over a period of hours or days. Because if you make that decision in that moment, you have a 50-50 chance of it working out. You ride up and down on emotional waves, and sometimes you can be high on your wave or sometimes you can be low. And if you're in one of those two extremes, your perception may be skewed and your sacral response may reflect that. So let's say that you're in a low point on your wave. You're not in a very good mood, and there's something coming to you that you're responding to, and your response is It could just be that you're not in a very good mood, and you may feel differently about it the next day. So what you're really looking for is an over time, a consistent over time, or a consistent over time. And that way you avoid that distortion of the extremes in your emotions. So never make a decision in the moment. Always sleep on your decisions. Don't get pressured into making a decision right at the time that you get the opportunity. Just wait. Especially if it's something big, of course, especially if it's something really important to you. And this is where you will want to do multiple sacral sessions to feel out what your true consistent response is to this opportunity or this question. Now, if you have a pure sacral authority, notice on this body graph the emotional solar plexus is undefined and the spleen center is undefined. So you're relying solely on your sacral response, and your sacral response is pretty immediate. So you're using your sacral response to make those decisions. Your sacral tells you in the moment with that gut reaction whether or not something is correct for you. And if you get an in the moment, you need to follow that impulse in that moment. Or if you get an you need to back away or not pursue that particular opportunity in that moment. Now that doesn't mean if you get an now that you won't get an later. It just means that you don't take that step in that moment. But it may be appropriate later on to take that step. The timing may be right later on and your sacral will go and then you take that step in the moment. You take that action in the moment. Remember that this is a moment by moment guidance system. With the emotional authority, you kind of have to feel it out moment by moment over time. With the sacral authority, with the pure sacral authority, you heed the guidance of your sacral moment to moment, even if it changes. And then the third authority is sacral awareness generated. You have the sacral defined and the spleen center defined. And what this means is that you're still primarily relying on your sacral response, and your sacral speaks to you moment to moment. The spleen center also speaks in the moment, but the spleen center has a quiet, spontaneous, instinctual recognition type of a cue. So you're still relying on the sacral response, but you have this backup system of the spleen to sort of give you that confirmation. And a lot of times when the spleen speaks, it speaks in a full body kind of way, like the hairs will stand up on your arm, or you'll feel your whole body light up, or some other sort of physical bodily cue that's usually wired in with the theme of survival. So follow your sacral response in the moment and allow your spontaneous intuition through the spleen to give you additional information to back up and confirm what your sacral center is telling you. And again, just because it's in this moment doesn't mean that it won't be in the next moment. Now, another thing that can happen if you have a sacral awareness generated authority is your sacral may be going but you may be feeling some sort of a bristling in your body that's telling you not now. So your spleen is giving you secondary information that yes, this is a great decision, but not right now. It's something that you will have to begin to really play with and embody to get a sense of how your spleen and your sacral work together.